outside the university. So these are those restrictions where this restraint of trade is valid. Otherwise, there cannot be any agreement in restraint of trade. Second thing is wagering agreements. A wagering agreement is a promise to give money or money's worth upon the determination of an uncertain event. Now, this is similar to betting, where yesterday I gave you the example that if there are two persons and they bet that they make a bet that if it rains tomorrow, I'll give you 500 rupees, and if it doesn't, then you give me 500 rupees. So naturally, one of the parties would benefit at the cost of another party, and such type of agreements, they do not give rise to any contract and cannot be enforceable in the court of law. Now, there are certain transactions which are not held as wagers, which are not wagering agreements. Like, for example, transactions for the sale and purchase of stocks and shares. So when you purchase stocks and shares from the company and or from the stock market even, and that is the secondary market, for long-term investment, they are transferred into your name, and then you are entitled to receive all the benefits which the company gives from time to time if you are a shareholder of the firm, like, for example, dividend payments or certain access to rights shares or any other such benefit which the company may give from time to time to its shareholders. But then there are certain exceptions in the sale and purchase of stocks and shares. Like if the shares are purchased just for getting quick returns, that is when they are not transferred in your name and you sell the shares at a less profit. Whenever there is a rise in the value of the shares, so speculative trade, that is called speculative trading. So speculative trading, that is not enforceable. Otherwise, long-term investment in stocks and shares is not held as wagers. Then prize competitions, which are games of skill. Although there is uncertainty whether a person would win or lose, but then the games of skill, whether it's an athletic event or whether it's indoor games like chess or any other, they are games of skill. You have equal chances of winning or losing that particular game. But then they are games of skill, and those who are highly skilled, they usually, on the basis of the skills that they possess, they win the prize. So such prize competitions, they are not held as wagers. Then an agreement to contribute a plate or prize of the value of 500 or above to be awarded to the winner of the horse race. So the winners of horse races, they are also again they are games of skill, and but then betting on a particular horse during the race, that is a wager. So winning or losing a horse race, that is allowed, and that is a valid agreement. Contributing a prize to be awarded to the winner. So the winner would get that prize, and that if he doesn't get the prize, then that he can go to the court of law and demand the payment of that prize. But then betting on the horse during the race, that is a wager. Then contracts of insurance. Now, insurance contracts, basically, they are also based on the happening or non-happening of an uncertain future event. Like, for example, if it's vehicle insurance, for example, a particular vehicle may get destroyed or damaged during the course when it's being put to use by the owner, and there's uncertainty. I mean, if everything goes on well, I mean, the vehicle would be in good form, but then it can meet an accident, and that is uncertain. So it's also based on uncertain event. But the real interest of both the parties is not. I mean, the damage is not the real interest of both the parties, because the insurance company would also like that the owner's vehicle should be saved, and the owner would also like his or her vehicle to remain safe. So the owner pays a premium to the insurance company, and the insurance company then promises that in case of any such uncertain future event, when the vehicle gets damaged, in such situations, the vehicle may would be okay. Just a minute. I'll just come. Excuse me, just a minute. So the real interest of the insurance company, and as well as that of the owner of the vehicle, would be that the vehicle should remain safe, and the occurrence, the accident should not happen. So contracts of insurance, they are valid agreements, and we'll take up in the next topic the type of those contracts which are called as contingent contracts, which are based on the happening or non-happening of an uncertain future events, and they are valid contracts. Is anything related to this slide which is not clear? Which needs further explanation if no. Okay, we'll be moving to the next topic, that is contingent contracts. Now, contingent contracts, they are the contracts to do or not to do something if some event collateral to such contract does or does not happen. Now, in this type of contract, there's a collateral event which is not part of the consideration. Like, for example, there's a contract between say a company, a person who wants to get his house built, for example, and a contractor for the construction of his house, along with the building material. Like, so if there is a contract between the owner of the land and the contractor for the construction of a house, in this contract there is a consideration which moves from the owner to the contractor. That is, the contractor would be paid 50 lakh rupees by the owner of the land, and then there is a consideration that moves from the contractor to the owner of the land. That means the contractor would build up a double-storied house on that particular land. So these are the considerations that move between the two parties. Now, if there is a contract between the two parties on and it's based on some collateral event, like for example, the owner of the proposed house would like that although he had applied for the approval of the plan of the house and had applied in the Aligarh Development Authority for the proposal to be approved. And suppose it takes some time for the approval to be granted by the authorities. So now this contract is given by the owner of the land to the builder on the this particular promise that if the plan is approved by the authorities, then only the construction would be made. So there's this stipulation that is given in the contract, which is outside the considerations which move between the two parties. Now, in this case, if the authorities refuse to give permission or clearance to the project, then in that case, the contract between the two parties would become void. So this happening or non-happening of this uncertain future event, that is the grant of permission by the Aligarh Development Authority for developing or granting the approval for that proposed plan of building that two-storied house on this plot of land. The contract would become valid if the authorities they approve the plan, and the contract would become void if the authorities they do not grant the permission to build that house. So the performance of that particular contract between the builder and or the contractor and the owner of the land is dependent on this collateral event, that is the grant of permission by the Aligarh Development Authority. So this is basically these type of events which are outside the hands of both the parties. They are the collateral events, and if the happening or non-happening of those events, they decide upon whether a contract would remain valid or would become void. So contracts of insurance, contracts of guarantee or indemnity, they are all they're based on the happening or non-happening of a future uncertain event, and they are known as, and such type of contracts which have such type of stipulations, they are called as contingent contracts. So is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, there are certain rules regarding the performance of contingent contracts. Contingent contracts to do or not to do anything if any event, if an uncertain future event happens, cannot be enforced by law unless and until that event has happened. So contingent contracts to do or not to do anything if an uncertain future event happens cannot be enforced by law unless and until that event has happened. Now, suppose there's a person A and B. There are two parties, and A wants to, say, sell his land to B. So A makes a contract with B to sell his, say, house. But then there's a stipulation that is made in this contract that since A had first approached C for the sale of his house, and C had demanded a period of, say, 15 days to think about this and finalize this the decision. So there's a contingent that happening, which is attached, or event that is attached, that if C, for example, to whom the offer had been made earlier, declines to buy A's house, then only the contract between A and B for the sale of the house would be valid. And if suppose within 15 days, if C desires to buy the house of A, then the contract between A and B would become void, because now since C had been offered earlier, so there's a stipulation that is made in this type of this contract, that although there's a contract for the sale of the house, suppose A offers to sell his house for 25 lakhs to B, but on the condition that if C, to whom the house had been offered earlier, declines to buy the house, then only that sale would be made. And if C desires to buy the house, then in that case the contract would become void. And if C declines to buy the house, then the contract would become valid. And if C desires to buy the house, then the contract would become void. Then contingent contracts to do or not to do anything if an uncertain future event does not happen can be enforced when the happening of that event becomes impossible and not before. Or suppose there's a truck that is carrying fragile goods from the seller to the buyer, and there's a contract that is made by the seller with an insurance company, and the insurance company promises that if the truck that's carrying the fragile goods overturns, then the company would pay a certain amount to the owner of the fragile goods. So in such events, if the truck reaches safely, then the contract would not be enforced. It would become void, because the insurance company will not then pay any amount to the owner of the goods. And in case if the truck overturns and the goods, they are destroyed, so in that case the contract would become valid, and the insurance company will, as promised, the insurance company will pay that insurance amount to the owner of the goods. If a contract, number 3, if a contract is contingent upon how a person will act, and at an unspecified time, the event shall be considered to become impossible when such person does anything which renders it impossible that he should so act within any definite time, or otherwise than under further contingencies. Now, to explain this particular rule, I could not find any example from the business context. There's one example that's given in the book um, by the author of the book. Just a minute. Hello. Sorry. So I could not find any example from business, but there's one example that's given which explains this particular rule from the book written by M.C. Kuchal, and this is about the promise that is made between A and B. A makes a promise to B that if I will loan a certain amount to B, that is, A will loan a certain amount to B if B marries C. Now, this is a contract, and this the collateral event in this contract is B's marriage to C. Now, the main contract is between A and B, where A will loan a certain amount to B. So the consideration that will move from A to B will be the loan amount. And the consideration that would move back from B to A would be the repayment of the loan along with the interest. So these are the considerations that move between the two parties. But then this particular contract is dependent on B's promise to marry C. C may be a girl, for example. Now, A had asked B to marry C within a period of, say, 3 months. Now, during this period, C marries a particular person, D. Now, when C marries D, it becomes impossible for B to marry C. So the contract becomes void, right? And it's impossible. So the event shall be considered to become impossible when such person does anything which renders it impossible that he should so act within an indefinite time. Now, what will happen then? Suppose after 1 year, D dies and C becomes a widow. Now, B marries C, the widow of D. Now, this will not revive the contract. Once it has become void, it will not revive the contract, because the stipulation that was made by A to B was to marry C within a period of 3 months. So the marriage of C to D renders it impossible, and this contract at the moment when C marries D becomes void. Number 4, contingent contracts to do or not to do anything if a specified uncertain event happens within a fixed time becomes void if at the expiration of the time fixed such event has not happened, or if before the time fixed such event becomes impossible. Now, suppose there's an election rally and there are companies that provide the services of helicopters for the politicians to undertake tours during the election campaigning. Now there's a company which gives a promise to another, say the owner of the helicopter company, that if a certain helicopter that has been leased for 3 months does not returns back safely, that then I'll lend you say 50,000 rupees. And suppose after that fixed time, that is after 3 months, the helicopter returns safely. So in that case, the contract would become valid, and the loaned amount would be given by the one party to another, say A to B. But if suppose the helicopter crashes within that 3 months period, so in that case the contract would become void, and the lender need not then lend the money to the borrower in that case. So move to the next slide. Contingent contracts to do or not to do anything if a specified uncertain event does not happen within a fixed time, may be enforced by law when the time fixed has expired and such event has not happened, or before the time fixed has expired if it becomes certain that such event will not happen. Like it's in a contract of insurance. For example, there's a shipping company which makes a contract with an insurance company that a certain ship that has sailed in deep waters, in deep ocean, if it doesn't return, then the insurance company will pay a certain amount to the owner of the ship. And if it reaches safely, say within 6 months, if there's a period that is given, usually in insurance contracts there is a period that is given. So if the ship returns within 6 months, then in that case the contract would become void, and the insurance company will not give anything to the ship owner. Now here the consideration between the insurance company and the ship owner is that the ship owner will give the premium of insurance to the insurance company, which may be a substantial amount, and the insurance companies, the consideration from the insurance company would be that it will, in case of any event which may occur, like for example the ship sinks or is destroyed in the ocean, then in that case the insurance company will pay that particular promised amount to the ship owner. So if the ship reaches back safely, then in that case the contract would become void, and if the ship sinks in the deep ocean, then the contract would become valid, and the insurance company will give the insured amount to the owner of the ship as promised. Number 6, contingent agreements to do or not to do anything if an impossible event happens are void, whether the impossibility of the event is known or not to the parties to the agreement at the time it was made. Now suppose there's an agreement between two persons, A and B. A wants to sell his car and wants B to assist him selling the car for rupees 1 lakh. So a contract is made, an agreement is made between A and B that B will help A in selling the car of A for rupees 1 lakh within a period, say, of 1 month. And at the time when the contract was made, when this agreement was signed between the two parties, unaware of the fact that down the street some miscreants, they put that vehicle on fire and it was destroyed. So since the car was destroyed, so the agreement became void, and the A will not advance any money to B because in that case, since the contract became void, so A will not pay any amount to B as promised by A for selling that particular car. So these are contingent contracts or agreements which the rules relating to such type of contracts where future uncertain event may decide upon the validity of a particular contract. There's a difference between the contingent contract and wagering agreement, because both the wagering agreement as well as a contingent contract, they are dependent on the happening or non-happening of future uncertain event. A contingent contract is a valid contract, but a wagering agreement is absolutely void because it's a bet, and here the only one party would benefit from this particular agreement. Although in a contingent contract, both the parties, they benefit from the contract because the considerations, they move from both sides, although that contingent event is outside the consideration. But in a contingent contract, the parties have real interest in the occurrence or non-occurrence of the event. But in a wager, the parties are not interested in the occurrence of the event except for winning or losing the bet amount. So here, whether it's an insurance contract, the parties, they have a real interest in the whether in the occurrence or non-occurrence of the event. And if everything goes well and if there's no accident, perhaps both the parties, they will benefit from that contract. And but in case of wager, the losing or winning of the bet amount, that is the main consideration of both the parties. In a contingent contract, the future uncertain event is merely collateral. It's not part of the the main considerations. It's merely collateral, whereas in wagering agreement, the uncertain event is the sole determining factor of the agreement. So these are the differences between a contingent contract and wagering agreement. We have about 1 minute left for this session. If you have any queries or if anything is not very clear, perhaps I can take up that matter.
Sir, as you taught in the fourth point,
Mm-hmm.
the previous slide.
Okay, I'll come to that. Just a minute. Just a minute. Yes.
So, like it's written that if event it becomes impossible, then it is void. So, sir, what happened to the amount which is used in that event beforehand?
Like there's a contract between two parties, suppose A and B. And I gave you the example of a helicopter company which promised to lend a particular amount to some party if the helicopter returns back safely within a period of 3 months. Now, in case the helicopter crashes during that period, so since this contingent event of returning back safely, it was not part of the consideration. Lending and borrowing of amount is the main contract. That is, the lender would lend a particular amount, and this would be the consideration